Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Lili Kazemi.
And I'm Andrew Pryor. It is the week of May 8th, and this is your Monday briefing. The House and Senate are both in session this week. President Biden will meet May 9th with congressional leaders to discuss possible solutions to the debt limit issue. The House Ways and Means Committee will hold a May 9th field hearing in Staten Island, New York, focused on trade issues. And the Senate Finance Committee will hold a May 11th hearing on the impact of U.S. international tax policy on the pharmaceutical industry. PwC's Will Morris is one of the witnesses scheduled to testify. New inflation data will be out this week with the May 10th release of the April Consumer Price Index report and the May 11th release of the April Producer Price Index report. Finally, the G7 finance ministers will meet May 11th to 13th in Niigata, Japan. Lili?
Thank you, Andrew. In a May 1st letter to congressional leaders, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen stated that the government may run out of extraordinary measures to meet its debt obligations as early as June 1. Joining us to share his insights on the debt limit issue and other economic developments is Karl Russo. Karl, welcome to Policy on Demand.
Thank you for having me, Lili.
So Karl, President Biden is set to meet with top congressional leaders tomorrow to find a path forward on the debt limit. What actions might we expect coming out of this meeting?
First thing that we'll expect is not a deal, right? So it's far too early in the process, even with a month out, to expect that out of this first meeting. But we would expect the principals to articulate their positions to each other face to face and try to determine who actually can negotiate the terms of the final deal that we would expect to emerge from this process. So I think what we should look for is statements after the fact. Hopefully there will be enough process that people make encouraging statements that the process will continue to go forward as we seek to find a deal between the parties.
So Karl, the House passed debt limit growth package. It doesn't appear that the Senate has the votes to pass that. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has talked about a clean debt limit bill that he's introduced, but you've got more than 40 Senate Republicans who signed a letter saying that they will not vote for any debt limit bill that doesn't include substantial spending and budget reform. So what do you see as the path forward in Congress for moving whatever debt limit agreement emerges from these negotiations?
Well, you're right to point out that there aren't votes right now for either side to have their preferred outcome. And I actually think that's really helpful to the process because it shows that we need to have a negotiation in order to resolve the situation. And so I think where we'll start to see is a search for those 218 vote deal in the House that will also garner 60 votes in the Senate. And the parties will continue to try to meander or stumble towards that outcome. I expect that in the end, we will see something that includes some sort of spending restraint, perhaps along the lines of what was agreed to when we went through this exercise more than a decade ago, with some sort of spending cap. Perhaps you'll see something on rescissions of unspent COVID money, but it really will be a determination between the parties of what we think we can do given the divided congressional situation, as well as what the White House will be willing to accept as a result of that. In order to actually get there, you need to go through some of these sort of failed tests of other propositions, and I think that's partly what we're seeing going on right now with the exchange of letters and position statements in Congress.
So Karl, turning to the broader economic outlook, despite the Federal Reserve's raising interest rates to curb inflation, U.S. companies added over 250,000 jobs in April. Unemployment fell to a historic low at 3.4%, and wages are up. What do these numbers tell us about the state of the economy and where it might be headed?
Right, so as you mentioned, we're continuing to see the strength in the labor market that has really been sort of a tale of two data streams with respect to the U.S. economy. Growth overall has still been relatively weak. We had first quarter GDP growth, just barely north of 1%. Maybe we'll do a little bit better in the second quarter. But really what we have seen is that productivity has not kept up. So as we've had the strong increase in jobs, we haven't seen it accompanied by a large increase in output to support that. And we do have this continued inflationary pressure as a result of relatively strong consumer demand driven by that strong labor market. And so I think we'll continue to look at the Fed to try to balance those risks. They've said that they are maybe moving towards more of a neutral posture with respect to interest rates after their most recent rate increase. And I think expectations are that the economy will continue to sort of chug along at relatively modest growth rate, even in the face of this strong labor market. I think eventually we'll start to see some of the consequences of those interest rate increases showing up in the economic data, and that will pull out some of those inflationary pressures, but also tamp down the expectations of growth going forward, at least in the short to medium term.
Great insights, Karl, especially when this area is such a moving target.
Be sure to check out the latest Week in Review with Mark Prater, included in the description of this episode.
As always, thank you for spending this time with us. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.